Warning: Tongue and Geek contains heavy spoilers. If you haven't read, watched, or played the content being reviewed this episode, know that we will definitely spoil major plot points. Also, this show isn't for kids. We use words like and and it would take too much time and effort to edit them all out. Please don't tell our moms. I'm just gonna start recording. Okay, yeah, you do your intro. You're in charge of the intro this time.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tongue in Freak, our special Halloween episode. I'm Tyler,
I'm Isaac.
and we literally just got done watching David Cronenberg's acclaimed 1986 remake of The Fly.
Yes, we did.
And by just finished, I mean, like, it's only been a minute since credits rolled.
Yeah.
And, see, I gave Isaac a choice here.
Oh, yes, he did, and I chose wrong.
I said, Isaac, for our last episode, The Fly or American Werewolf in London. See, I assumed he would pick American Werewolf in London, you know, because he likes monsters like that. He likes werewolves. It's a more comedic film, so I figured he'd go with that. But he chose The Fly inexplicably, and I'm like, oh, he doesn't know. He doesn't know what he's in for.
I chose this movie because you seemed more excited about it, and Halloween's your thing, and I wanted to cater to you. I did.
You thought of me.
And it was a poor choice. If I could go back in time, I would destroy my own empathy so I wouldn't think of this choice. Oh, God, fuck, I hate horror!
What blows my mind is I've been so steeped in horror for so long that it takes me by surprise when people have such a visceral reaction to it.
Mm-hmm. You're like, what? This is normal. It's fine.
So I anticipated Isaac would be grossed out, a little bummed out, but he seems like he's having a hard time here.
It's nasty. It's a fucking gross movie. Oh, that's my review. The end. Are we done?
What did you think of The Fly starring Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis?
I hated the whole thing. Oh my fucking god, it's so nasty. Okay. Now,
did you hate the experience of it, or do you think it's a bad movie?
I do not think it's a bad movie. It accomplishes exactly what it wants to, which is to gross you the fuck out and depress you the fuck out, and it does that wonderfully, and I fucking hate it. Yeah. Okay, background us, Tyler. I know we didn't really prep much, but you surely know some details on the background here.
No, we didn't prep much. Like I said, this is a remake from David Cronenberg. If anybody knows anything about David Cronenberg, you know that he is an acclaimed filmmaker who deals a lot with the psychology of the body, of sexuality, and man's relationship with it. And this is probably his most mainstream movie up to this point. Before, he had dabbled in horror and stuff like that, but it was on a more low-key scale. But this one was his breakout. It had 2 upcoming stars with Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. It got great reviews. This is a mainstream film, Isaac. That's the thing. This made money. People went and saw this.
Yeah.
I love how your reaction is just like, what is this? Why?
I just fucking hate this genre.
And it's
I hate this genre so goddamn much.
It's in the triptych of acclaimed 80s remakes from 50s B movies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up there with The Thing from John Carpenter and The Blob, which we already talked about. Unlike The Blob, this is a very serious movie.
Yeah.
And a very heart-wrenching movie and a very disgusting movie.
It's very fucking gross. Ugh.
It's known for its special effects, but I guess since we're doing this so off the cuff and we didn't plan it out, and I wanted to capture like the raw, emotional response right after.
Oh, you're getting it. You're getting it, folks.
Let's talk about the effects.
Yeah, let's do that.
Oh God, I blanked on who did the effects. I'm pretty sure it was Chris Walas who did the effects for the first Gremlins film, among other things.
Just pull it
Let
up
me.
on
I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't want to talk out of my booty hole here.
I'll just IMDb this shit.
He directed the second film, the sequel, which I won't make you watch, so don't worry.
I'm not gonna. You couldn't tell me. I'd kill myself. I'd pull a fly at the end of the movie, and I'd put the gun to my head and make you kill me.
Yes, he did the special effects.
Okay, cool.
While it's known as a special effects film and for the crazy gore and violence, what makes it work is that it's not just gross for gross's sake. All of the grossness is there to put emphasis on the horror of what our character Jeff Goldblum, Seth Brundle, is going through.
Mm-hmm.
And it's meant to sell you the deterioration, the degradation, and just the utterly bleak arc that he's going through as he is slowly morphing into a fly creature.
Can I throw? I want to throw a couple things out here with my background. I have seen parodies of The Fly in fucking children's entertainment, and the fact that shit flew over the censors is like horrifying to me. In the original red, blue, and yellow Pokemon games, you come across Bill, the PC guy, who's experimenting with the teleporter, and he gets crossed with a Pokemon. And it just seems like like the graphics on that aren't really good enough for you to see what he looks like, but it's just like, oh, haha, he got turned into a Nidoran or whatever. That's cute. It's not like a horrifying monstrosity like it is in this. And the only other like interaction I've had with The Fly, I think, was in motherfucking DreamWorks Monsters vs. Aliens, where they have a guy who gets crossed with a cockroach, and he just kind of looks like a funny-looking cockroach man. He doesn't look that creepy or gross. He's just, like, kind of, like, he's got, like, a hard carapace, but he's not, like, ugh. We'll get into it. Go back to practical effects. Go ahead and...
I guess we're kind of jumping ahead with the effects here. For those who don't know, I doubt anybody who's going to listen to this doesn't know. The story's about a scientist, Seth Brundle, who is working on this groundbreaking technology, teleportation pods. You put something in one, materializes in the other, revolutionizes the world. He meets a science journalist at a party. They flirt a little. He's like, I'm working on something big. They fall in love. He's like, you can make this your life's work. Do this with me. She agrees, and then there's all kinds of
nasty. Then there's all kinds of nasty.
It's kind of about, in many ways, kind of about like the fragile hubris of men, because the impetus of him teleporting himself, because at first he can only teleport inanimate objects.
Mm-hmm.
Tries to teleport a baboon, turns inside out, which is a portent for what's to come.
Which I've said multiple times, like, why the fuck is he starting with baboons? Start with a less intelligent creature. Start with a mouse or a fucking beetle or something. Like, good God, you took one of the closest species to humans and you just threw it into your experimental teleporter and it turned into a meat sandwich. And it's, ugh. How easy was it for him to get a damn baboon? Like... There's so many other animals he could have used besides a baboon.
Isaac, the hubris of man, Isaac.
The hubris.
This is how these movies work.
Fucking mad scientists with their bullshit.
There's an interesting sort of character dynamic between the three main characters in the movie. Ronnie, who Gina Davis plays, is the journalist, and her publisher is her ex-boyfriend, and he's just a scuzzy piece of shit.
Yes, he is.
And he's disgustingly jealous of the budding relationship she has with Seth, and he tries to sabotage her work, and she runs off to fix it, leaving Seth, who is, eccentric scientist type, not the most socially aware, just kind of in his own head, gets jealous, and drunkenly teleports himself through the telepod. Little does he know that a fly flew in with him.
Mm-hmm.
At first, it's something of a miracle for him. He comes out feeling fresh as a daisy, kind of starts as almost like a superhero origin. He's strong.
Oh, yeah.
He feels great.
Real heroic. Yeah, he's like, this is just the new Spider-Man. Yeah.
But then it just takes a turn as his mind starts to deteriorate, as his body starts to deteriorate, and as he comes to the realization that he's not just going to die, he's turning into a new form of life.
I did want to can't find it anywhere. I'm looking online. I can't find it, but I swear those baboons in that movie
Oh, we're defanged.
were defanged. Like, I can't find
I
any
never noticed that.
details about it, but they looked like they didn't have any fangs, which is pretty fucked up to do to, like,
Yeah,
an animal.
yeah. I never noticed that when you pointed it out, but that might be the
Because
case.
baboons have
I can
big fucking, like, canines, and I just did not notice them, and, like, ugh.
I can say if they were defanged, they didn't do that for the movie. They don't do that kind of shit to animals for for mainstream films like this. It was probably something that the trainers had done previously. So that's kind of a weird aside that you noticed that I never
Messed up.
noticed.
It's still messed
Oh,
up.
of course. Oh, yeah. I'm not justifying it at all, but
Yeah.
yeah.
But anyway, continue with the movie's horror and not the ethics of animal abuse.
What do you what jumps out at you as the film's themes? Besides the obvious of man meddles with science and it backfires. That's the obvious.
Right. Fuck. I'm still in like the emotional stage. Getting my brain into the logical, analytical. It's gonna take some time. Hang on. Okay. So I will say what's very interesting, and this is skipping a bit in the plot. I found it very interesting that they tried to tackle issues of abortion in this film, because she finds out, the main love interest, Ronnie, finds out that she's pregnant with his child, and she doesn't know if it was like before or after he was mutated, so she's like horrified that she's gonna give birth to this like human fly mutant baby, and she wants to get an abortion, and she has like a horrifying dream sequence of giving birth to this larva. It's just so fucking gross. So yeah, I was really kind of impressed that at this point in time, this movie tried to tackle like topics of abortion and issues of like women's autonomy over their bodies as well. Because like both the Fly himself, David Brundlefly, and and her or Seth. Sorry, I don't know why I said David.
I don't know why either.
Yeah. David just came to mind for some reason. Oh, it's because I'm looking at David Cronenberg here.
Okay.
Is Seth Brundle and her shitty ex-lover. What was his name again?
Bathis Borns.
Whatever. Dickhole. Both of them are like, no, you have to give birth to this baby. We shouldn't do this abortion. It's like, fuck off. She's going to give birth to this gross mutant monster thing. And like...
No. Well, I have to interrupt you. Actually, Stathis doesn't want her to give birth. That's the only time he's decent in the film is when she's at her lowest. When she finds out she's pregnant, he's like, well, what do you want to do?
He's still hesitant about it in a way that is, like, discouraging.
Yeah.
Like, she's very, very clearly torn up about this, and he's seen the footage of what the Fly looks like at this point, and, like, he's still discouraging her, like, oh, what, you want to go right now? No, we can't do this right now. Like, he's still, like, making it about, like, this could have, like, social impact on me and stuff, instead of it being, like, recognizing the severe emotional reaction she's having and the way that she wants to deal with her own bodily autonomy.
Right. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to just the fragility of male ego.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of it, and even though this is one of my favorite horror films, I haven't seen it in a long time, so those kind of gender themes I didn't pick up on the last time I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
So watching it this time, it was like a whole other avenue of themes that I noticed. This woman is caught between these two men who are emotionally, unstable in various ways. And Seth is a mostly good person, but Stathis is a piece of shit. But like, it just becomes kind of like this battle of like what they want from her and what they want her to do. How it tackles abortion is pretty mature and straightforward, especially for a mainstream movie in the 80s, because it doesn't try to moralize it. It doesn't agonize over like, oh, is she doing the right thing or anything like that. She makes a decision and she wants to stick by her decision, and it is her decision. So I thought that was a really interesting like you mentioned, a really interesting thing to do for a movie, especially of this time period.
Yeah, I thought that was very impressive. It's one of the few points in the movie where I was able to disconnect my logical brain long enough and be like, wow, I'm good on you, movie. Good on you for tackling this. And then I was immediately like, afterwards.
Well, you mentioned the pop culture references you've seen. This is a remake, so the whole teleportation thing is in the original, but it's a 50s movie, so it has that 50s monster movie schockiness to it where it's just a guy with a big fly head and like a fly claw.
That makes more sense.
But I wouldn't be surprised if like the references that you've seen in like the Pokemon games and stuff like that were more influenced by this film than the 50s one.
Oh, I don't know.
And judging from your earlier comments, it seems like because of those pop culture references, you maybe sort of expected the transformation element to be more instant. Over the top.
Well, I expected it to be instant. I expected it, like him to come out the other side and he was like this gross monster, and then they had to spend the rest of the movie dealing with him being this gross monster, instead of it being like this slow, gradual transformation into this monster that becomes more and more horrifying the further we go along.
Yeah, because you said when he teleported, you said, he looks fine, and I don't know if you were like joking or if like you were genuinely surprised, but I guess you were genuinely surprised.
No, I was genuinely surprised because I expected him to come out all fly, hideous looking and be like this like nasty, deformed monster, still with a human mind and everything. But then we'd have to deal with like him in a fly human hybrid body trying to survive and, you know, exist in society and everything. But I guess we weren't going that route. We were going the complete deterioration of a man over time angle, and it was far more disturbing this way.
Yeah. The popular reading of the movie that so many critics talk about is that it's like a metaphor for AIDS. While that's definitely something that you can easily, you know, surmise, Cronenberg himself said that he didn't quite think of it that way. He saw it more as a metaphor for aging and the process people go through when they age. And
if it's a metaphor for AIDS, that's pretty fucked up. If it's an AIDS metaphor, then it's like you're saying that AIDS victims become monstrous over time, not just in their physical appearance, but also in their psychological, like, they become like monsters who are willing to sacrifice others in order to try and cure themselves. Like, that's pretty fucked.
Yeah, that's why I've always kind of like, I never really took heed for that analysis, like, oh, because it came out during the height of the AIDS crisis. It's a prescient metaphor for AIDS and what it does to the body. And I'm like, that seems too obvious. Cronenberg, if you're familiar with his stuff, he doesn't play with the obvious like that. Mm-hmm. The aging metaphor, and I just think the overall metaphor of your body betraying you in some way is a far more potent metaphor for the film than just like, oh, it represents this thing, because he kind of goes through a lot of stages of grief, anger, denial, acceptance, you know, all that, and he kind of develops this sort of like very dark sense of humor about everything he's going through.
Yeah,
the aging metaphor really hit home this time watching, because it's like the way he kind of is about it, like,
because we just had our birthdays.
sad at first, sad and depressed that like, God, my body's giving up on me. It's changing. I can't do what I used to be able to do. And then to become more just like bitterly, darkly, cynically comical about it. Like, you know, people who age, like, they have that sort of mentality. You know, I've seen my parents make those jokes. I've seen my in-laws make those jokes. My grandparents, you know, just like that kind of attitude about, oh, I'm getting old. Isn't that some shit? Like,
my ear fell off. My fingernails came out, and there's pus everywhere.
Obviously, it's taken to the horrific extreme in the film, because that's what the film is
about. It's so fucking nasty. It's so gross. This movie's so fucking gross. Oh.
Poor baby Isaac. Poor virginized Isaac.
I've seen some shit, but fuck, it's still never pleasant to see it. I keep seeing awful things, and people keep expecting me to be desensitized to it. It's like, no, I still have my soul. I
don't expect you to be desensitized to it. I don't know what I expect. It's a tragedy, is what it is.
It absolutely is a tragedy.
Over it being a monster movie, over it being a gross out movie, it's a tragedy, because yeah, it does the whole movie thing. Characters quickly fall in love, but that's just how films work. You only have 90 minutes to tell a story.
Especially in the
But
80s.
but they make it believable because Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis, they have good chemistry. They were actually dating at the time, and
Goldblum was young and hot.
yeah,
I mean,
young and hunky.
He's old and hot now, but like he was young and hot back then.
And it's a tragic love story. And I just told him before we started recording this, like, since I haven't seen it in a while, it always bums me out. But like this time, like I found myself getting sucked into it all over again, like I used to when I was a kid, almost like I was watching it for the first time. By the climax, I was like, my stomach was a little knotted up, and I was kind of clenching my fists.
Mm-hmm.
And then, spoilers, I'm getting there. It doesn't matter. This is very unorganized and off the cuff, and I think that's probably what's going to make this a good episode. As Seth continues to transform or deteriorate, he has this great monologue about insect politics. Have you heard of insect politics? No, neither have I, because they don't have it. Insects are simple creatures. They're brutal. They're uncompromising. And I'm an insect now, basically, is what he's saying. Like, I am not Seth. I am something else. At this point in the film, Ronnie had come to tell him that she was pregnant with his child and she was going to abort it. But because of his advanced state, she couldn't do it. And she leaves without telling him. And he's like, what I'm trying to say is, like, if you stay here, like, I'm going to hurt you. And it's not a threat. It's just a sad acknowledgement of what he's becoming, and he won't be able to control whatever it is he's becoming.
Yeah.
She's outside demanding Stathis take her to go get the baby aborted, and Seth is up on the roof overhearing it. He kidnaps her from the hospital, takes her back to his place, and his plan is to use the teleporter to merge himself, Ronnie, and the baby into one sort of super being. Doesn't work out. Stathis gets his hand and his foot melted off by his fly vomit, but he regains consciousness just in time to save Ronnie from the teleporter by shooting some of the power cables. And
which I gotta say, I get that they were kind of going for a redemption arc with Stathis here, and this was his hero moment, but it doesn't feel fucking deserved. Stathis is a fucking gross. He's
I don't see it as like a redemption arc. I don't see it as something that cut and dry. It's the movie about people, like about gray people. It's not like a good versus evil story. It's not something of like, they start off on this journey and then they're this way at the end of the journey. It's, even though it's a sci-fi horror concept about a man turning into a big fly, it's more nuanced than that. And I don't see Stathis shooting the wires and saving her as like some kind of redemption thing. It's just.
Well, it's the hero moment. He's the one who stops the process from going through. He's the one who saves the day. The movie gives that to him instead of having her do something to overcome it. And that's just a problem with like a lot of the fucking 80s films, and I guess maybe Hades horror, I can't really say, I haven't watched enough horror, is that like a lot of female characters just don't get the autonomy to like be the heroic figure, to have the hero moment where they save the day. It had to be given to Stathis, the rapey sort of sexual predator who's been at best sort of supportive of her abortion and at worst straight up like stalking her and like threatening her and all this other shit. Like he gets the hero moment. Like that's kind of fucked.
I don't know. I don't see it as the hero moment. I just see it as something that he had to do. I mean, it's not like he came away unscathed. I mean, he's physically deformed for the rest of his life.
And like, but that's not what the hero moment's about. The hero moment is about like having the moment where you stop the worst case scenario from happening. Even though this movie still ends in tragedy, it could have been much worse if it ended with all three of them merging into an even more horrifying mutant. He gets the moment where he stops the bad thing from happening.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the term hero moment I can't make that fit into the puzzle that is The Fly, because I don't see it as that kind of story where there's those kind of moments. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not victorious is what I'm saying. Yeah. It's not like a denouement. Like, And
Well, it's not always the hero moment isn't always a victory. Sometimes it's avoiding a defeat. It's a Pyrrhic victory, you know. Something bad still happens, but it could have been even worse. Or the victory is given, but it's comes with a price that makes it seem meaningless.
we'll have to agree to disagree on that point. I guess you can read it as, you know, the female character doesn't technically save herself, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing depending on the kind of story that's being told in the execution. Her whole arc isn't like learning to like become a stronger, more independent person.
No,
She's
that's
an
not what this
independent
film's
person
about.
to begin with.
That's not what the film's about, and I don't
Yeah.
need her to have the strong hero. I didn't necessarily need her to have the hero moment. I just felt skeezed out that Stathis, this asshole, gets the hero moment, you know?
Yeah, okay. I guess I could see that point. I guess I could see that point of view. But Seth Fly is coming out of the teleporter at the very end, and he's merged with the telepod now. So he's just this half metal, half meat, just monstrosity that is crawling toward her. And at this point, he's like basically full fly. He doesn't have a mouth. He can't speak. She's got the gun that Stathis had brought to the apartment to kill him in her hands, and he just takes the barrel and puts it to his head, and just it's such a powerful moment, and it's such a gut punch because he still has that humanity in him, even though he was about to do something horrific. Like, he comes crawling out of that pod defeated, and he knows that, like, I can't be this thing. I can't let this thing win. And in just this wordless scene, he's like, you know what you have to do, and she does it. Like, she puts him out of his misery,
And that's it. That's the end of the film.
and
it ends right
that's
there.
That's the end of the movie. It ends with her crying her eyes out, with his head blown off, and Stathis just there, just trying not to die from excessive blood loss.
Yeah, no epilogue, no wrap up. That's the end. I will say that this was probably a very revolutionary scene for this time period, and it certainly still does hit hard just with how fucking depressing and gross this film is. It definitely is just like I can definitely see this guy wanting himself to both be put out of his misery and to be put out of everyone else's misery. But we have seen this sort of like kill me sort of moment in so much media since then, you know? Like, it's in all over. In any sort of drama that wants to make itself seem super shocking, it will have a moment where, like, a character has been turned into something monstrous or has had something monstrous done to them that, like, there's no coming back from, and they'll have, like, the kill me moment. I will say that, like, him putting the gun to his head did not shock me as much as the stuff that happened to him throughout the rest of the film, because I've seen that sort of scene before where we have somebody who's so far gone that, like, they just long for the end.
Yeah, it's not about it being shocking. It's more of just about it being the tragic inevitability of it. And
I was surprised that the movie just fucking ended there. Like that's it.
Yeah.
We're just done.
It wants you to just sit there, just with everything bowling over you, just like, well, I don't feel good.
You don't get a resolution. Fuck you. That's it.
Fun fact: Howard Shore did the score, and he did the score for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So there's a fun fact for you. You want to do nerd ethics just to keep the conversation going?
Well, did you have anything else to say? I feel like you stopped on the practical effects stuff, and then you didn't really pick it back up, because we do need to talk about it. Like, this film is an incredibly impressive display of practical effects done to the most horrifying and disturbing degree. Ugh. I'm going to be seeing the fucking fingernail pulling out pussy gunk scene in my brain for the next 10 years.
Yeah, it's a doozy, and it's renowned for being like one of the special effects movies like of the era for a reason. But I can say, judging by Isaac's reaction, if you're not used to body horror and things like that, and just seeing a person become more and more deformed in great vast detail, then word of caution, you might have a hard time.
Here's what I'll say for the practical effects, specifically with horror. of this time period. With CGI and animation in general, I've seen some really just fucked up animated shit, whether it be like hyper realistic CGI or more cartoonishly rendered 2D like violence and grotesque shit. Just like having surfed the internet and being a fan of animation in general, I see a bunch of that stuff. So like the particular content in theory here should not disturb me. I've seen worse. But with practical effects, there's not that separation of like, there's a level of fantasy to this, that you can have with like CGI and like 2D animation. Like, even though the practical effect is an effect, it's not something that's actually happening to their real life body. It's being done
physically there.
It's there. It's in the real world. It has much more weight than any CGI effect could have, and it's so fucking gross to see that kind of shit happen. The pus and the vomit and like the skin falling apart and everything. Even if it doesn't look necessarily real in the way that like maybe flesh would fall apart, you're still seeing something physically present happening, and it's so much more impactful.
Yeah, and that's why horror fans will never ever shut up about the magic of practical effects. Because, I mean, horror fans, and not just horror fans, but film fans in general, they love the practicality of physical effects that are there to see something that the actors are on set actually interacting with, and something that the effects team designed and crafted and agonized over how to pull it off, and how the director and cinematographer frame it and light it and shoot it. I'm tickled that you reacted to it so strongly, because it's a testament to how powerful the film is.
Yeah, I know you're tickled. I know you're just so happy that I'm gonna be eating tomorrow morning breakfast, and then I'm gonna look at like the gravy on my plate, and I'm gonna vomit because it's gonna remind me of the fucking pus coming out of his fingernails.
Oh, because we talked about it before. I love gore. I love mindless, disgusting gore, and I love meaningful gore. And this is meaningful gore because, like, as much as I enjoy it, like, it still makes me uncomfortable. And I've seen the movie a dozen times. And the reason it makes you uncomfortable isn't just the surface of ew, that's gross. It's because you're invested.
Yeah.
It's because you get to take the time to become invested in Seth and Ronnie, to care and feel the fear that he's in, the desperation that he's going through as his body is falling apart on him.
Yeah.
So you can put yourself in that more than just like, a lesser film. Like, if this was a lesser film made by a lesser filmmaker, it would be that movie you thought it would be. Like, he comes out a fly monster, and gross things happen.
Right.
But when he's in the mirror and his fingernails are falling off, you're just like, oh god, no, like, oh.
Why is this happening? Why am I watching this?
Like, what if that's me? Like, what if I get sick? What if my body starts betraying me in that way? It's really not good for a hypochondriac, because
no, it's not.
I have some hypochondriac tendencies, and this movie triggers that every goddamn time. The effects of The Fly, they still hold up.
Yeah.
Some 35 years later. So good job, Chris Wallace. You're a genius. You did Gremlins and you did The Fly, so you're one for the history books.
I don't have a nerd ethics question prepped. We can brainstorm one.
Okay. Teleportation pods. Are you for or against teleportation pods as a real-world solution to transportation?
God. Following the logic of this film, or just in general?
Following the logic of this film, knowing that something like this could go wrong.
Okay. Well, let's kind of break it down into its individual pieces, much like the teleportation pods do. The way that teleportation works in this film is that it disintegrates something and then reintegrates it, which it doesn't necessarily explain what the reintegration process is. It kind of suggests that it's pulling together the molecules from somewhere else, rather than, like, taking the original molecules and then piecing them back together in a different location. Like, it's taking a new set of molecules and doing it. Which, if that's the case, then this is already a matter of, like, are you dying every time you teleport, and then, like, a new version of yourself is being created in a new spot with all of your memories? Like that, like the film doesn't go into that, but like if it's really a disintegration reintegration process with like a different set of molecules, then it kind of implies that yeah, the you that comes out of the other side of the teleportation pod isn't
you before it
you.
went in.
It's a copy. It's a perfect copy that thinks it's the original. The original is dead though. So like that gets into a whole metaphysical question of like what is the self and like all of that shit. But let's assume that it actually is like the you from the original is the you that gets teleported, because the movie doesn't really get into like, oh, the self dies and then is reborn. Knowing that these risks are involved, where even the slightest inclusion of some foreign material can result in some horrific change to the user, I don't think you can say that there's an ethical way to have transportation, because he gets transformed because of a fly. And that's one thing that could happen. But even if we were in like the super tightest, most secure breakdown where like we were absolutely sure no insects could get in here, you're still dealing with like bacteria. You're still dealing with like anything in like the
how
air.
sterile do the pods have to be?
Right, like what's the minimum influence that can happen? Like if I go in there with just bacteria on me from something, am I going to become a gigantic bacteria? There's no reasonable level of sanitization that can like make this safe enough for widespread use.
Okay, let's go a step further. Let's say that they, as foolproof as possible, nip that in the bud. What are other aspects of the pods that might be unethical, that aren't just, tied to like the metaphysical and the body and what could happen to a person? What could people use them for that could be unethical?
Yeah. Well, first, the way that we see the pods here, they are individual pods. So you're already looking at, this is less of an ethical thing and more of a practical thing. You're already looking at severe limitations on like the location of these things. We can't have these pods literally everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah. They'd have to be bigger, or
you'd have to have them
centralized locations.
Right. You're gonna have to have them basically like airports, where there's a pod at one place and a pod at another place, and they connect to each other. So we're already getting into questions of like, how would that be integrated into everyday society? Is that going to be something that only the super rich elite can use? Or is that going to be something that's used for like military purposes, where like the military will set up a pod somewhere on like foreign soil and then just start, sending their men over through teleportation without having to... If you airdrop a pod in and then you can just start sending troops without actually having to go over the land, you can get a lot of shit done. Or you could like commit a lot of war crimes that way, because you can sneak in, sneak out without people, noticing. If the military gets their hands on this technology, there's a lot of shady shit that can be done with teleportation, even with the limitation of having a single pod.
Yeah, and just the implications of the pod themselves are fucking fascinating. Like, you could do so much shit with them. Like you just said, war crimes, military can use them. Only the elite can use them. What if the black market got a hold of them,
Mm-hmm.
Drug trafficking, human trafficking, any kind of something where things need to be done under the radar as much as possible.
And what if they can be hacked? What if you can send somebody to a different location than they intended? Completely ruin like their day, or send them somewhere dangerous.
Yeah, it's fucking... It's such a fun sci-fi concept, these teleportation pods. Because I love the Simpsons Halloween episode where they parody this, where Bart turns into a fly. And Homer just... They get him at Dr. Frank's garage sale for like 50 cents or whatever. And Homer just uses them, like, he's in the couch and he's got one next to him and one next to the fridge, and he just puts his arm through it to open the fridge to grab a beer, so he doesn't have to get up and like go get a beer. Like,
yeah,
the possibilities are kind of just endless. Like, moving, like, you don't have to hire a truck and spend weeks moving and shit. You could just, have moving pods.
Yeah,
you just have them set up where you're gonna move, have them set up where you are, and put your shit in them, and bzz, like. The applications are almost endless when you think about it. So I am pro pod. I'm pro pod only if the private sector doesn't completely monopolize it. So, I mean, we're talking about our world here, so I mean that's never gonna fucking happen.
I mean, probably the biggest pro for these things is that they don't seem to be very high in energy consumption. I mean, like we do see like big flashes of light and everything, but there's never like a moment where we see like him drain the building of power or have to talk about like the huge amount of power that these pods consume and everything. Like this, if these pods are relatively like fuel efficient in that you can send somebody literally anywhere as long as there's another connecting pod, like that's going to be a huge decrease on the carbon footprint if we can get these things mass produced, is that you can literally just send anybody anywhere without having to put out a bunch of carbon emissions.
Yeah I mean, it's like they say in the movie, like, this is going to change the world, but oh, Seth, you goofed it.
Yeah,
I guess one more sort of theme I want to hit on before we can wrap it up if you want. We talked about how it can be a metaphor for aging and just illness in general, degradation from illness in general. But the flesh, they say the flesh a lot in the movie, is also a theme in that it explores kind of obsession with, I don't want to say pleasure, but just like intoxication of the body and like taking it for granted. I mentioned earlier that David Cronenberg, he has kind of that's his fixation as an artist. If you see more of his movies, like you'll easily catch on as to how like he works with themes of the body and pleasure and pain and how the body can be manipulated and warped and all that kind of stuff. When Seth is feeling good about going through the teleporter, he openly, it's like a drug, but a benign drug, a good drug. And when he wants Ronnie to go through it and she doesn't want to because she's afraid, he gets all pretentious about it. And he's like, you're just afraid because you don't want to expand your mind on the flesh and what the flesh means and stuff like that. And all he does is abuse the new flesh that he is in, that he feels so good in. He just, because of the influence of the fly, he eats like shit.
Mm-hmm.
All he wants to do is fuck,
Mm-hmm.
Like he wants to go out there and show how big of a dick he's got by like arm wrestling for male dominance.
Yeah, he basically becomes this perfect bodily fantasy for men of like, I can eat whatever the fuck I want without having any negative effects on my body. I can have sex for hours on end without running out of stamina. I'm stronger than everybody else. He becomes this power fantasy for a little while before it all comes crashing down around him.
Yeah, and this is another thing I picked up on after watching it just now is it's also a metaphor for people taking health for granted.
Yeah. Absolutely.
He feels like a peak human being, and he doesn't do anything with it but squander it and indulge.
Yeah.
So,
indulge and abuse. He breaks a guy's arm in an arm wrestling contest. He basically like tries to threaten women throughout this whole thing to force them to try and meet his own standards of like bodily health and everything. Like he does nothing but just abuse this power that he is immediately given.
Yeah, so it's just it's crazy how much you can pick up on in the movie and read from it, because there's a lot going on you might not see if you're blindsided by the grossness of it. And Isaac's been freaking out about how gross it is this whole time. And
nasty.
It is, but it's not gross the entire time. It's not just 90 minutes of pus and vomit and goopy nastiness. They're just really sharp, harsh, disturbing punctuations in the story, more than just like, ooh, how much can we throw at the audience left and right?
Yeah.
Because really, like, the first real gross out thing that happens is, it's the baboon. I was going to say when he breaks the guy's arm in the bar, but it would be earlier than that when the baboon was turned inside out.
Turned inside out, yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess to summarize, you would say, I'm gonna say that you would say that you didn't enjoy the movie, but you
No.
appreciated the movie.
I appreciate the film for what it's going for. It accomplishes exactly what it wants to do, which is to be a horrifying tragedy of the hubris of man that is disgusting and horrifying and leaves you with a pit in your stomach. It did that very well. I fucking hated it.
And you're never gonna watch it again.
No, God, no, never.
There is a sequel.
No, not happening.
I'm not gonna try to talk you into watching the sequel.
I will kill myself first.
The sequel, I like it as a monster movie, but the intelligence and the nuance is mostly gone.
Yeah.
It concerns Veronica has the kid. You don't quite. I haven't seen it in a while either. There's, I think, a flashback where you see her give birth, and it's not the same actress. It's not Gina Davis. So right off the bat, I'm kind of perturbed that they do away with Gina Davis and the character of Ronnie.
I'm kind of perturbed about the whole throwing out the abortion line. Like that was the whole. That was one of the best elements, was that it was willing to tackle this in a way that wasn't immediately damning to abortion.
There's a decent sort of the sins of the father have been visited upon the son kind of thing going on through the movie, but it's all two-dimensional because the company that he works for, Bartok, that was name dropped a couple of times in the movie, that's where his son is, and his son has an accelerated growth rate, so he grows super fast, and they got him under supervision his whole life, to manipulate him and to work on the pods. They're working on other pods. It's basically, the same thing again, his slow transformation. But his transformation isn't as gross as his father's. He metamorphizes, he actually goes into a cocoon. And then he comes out and he's like this big, nasty fly monster. And in the end just kind of turns into just a monster on the loose movie where he's going around just killing all the bad guys and stuff like that. But it has this one aspect to it that is just as gut-wrenching as the first film. He has a dog. They give him a dog.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And it's this beautiful golden retriever, and then something happens where it goes through the pods and it comes out deformed. And just this deformed dog puppet, it's so pathetic and so sad. I love a good depressing movie. The Fly, the first movie, is depressing as fuck. One of my favorite movies is Requiem for a Dream. That's the most depressing movie ever. But there's something about this dog part in The Fly 2 that's almost too cruel. It doesn't feel earned.
Well, there's always the whole seeing a dog suffer in a movie is always worse than seeing a person suffer in a movie.
Yeah, and this is it's so prolonged. You don't see it die in any sort of gory, violent way, but just the way it looks.
Yeah. And
how sad it is. It's just you know me, I can watch anything, but even with this, I'm just oh God, come on guys,
yeah, why are we doing this? Fuck. Damn it. Why are you hurting me?
So yeah, that's The Fly 2. Don't worry, I won't force you to watch that movie.
There's our official review. You're not getting anything more. You're never getting more, folks. Oh boy. I don't have
David Cronenberg, 1986.
Yeah, I don't really have a review because I didn't really prep. I got one review here that might be worth talking about. First off, the reviews are great. People love this film. 93% tomatometer. Rotten Tomatoes critics loved it. 83% audience score. I'm gonna look at one person who didn't like it though. This is from Ben L, and this is a bit of a lengthy one, but it might be worth talking about. Ben says, there's very little story in this movie. It's literally boy meets girl, boy is afraid he will lose girl, so boy makes a stupid mistake and turns himself into a disgusting freak of nature. I just don't get how this movie has captivated people, or why people desire to watch it. The Fly made me sick to my stomach. It is just loaded with intentionally grotesque imagery, and the grossness doesn't move the plot forward. In fact, the plot stagnates and simply becomes a series of moments where Gina Davis leaves Jeff Goldblum and then we wait until she goes back to find out how much more disgusting he's become. There are elements of the story that would work in another movie, but the effects from Cronenberg and his team are so over the top that about halfway through the film, I find Brundlefly completely unsympathetic, and I'm waiting for someone to kill him. I also have a tough time with the logic of his transformation. Why would combined genetic code lead to a fully human form that slowly transitions into a fully flam form. It seems he would instantly be a combination of the two, much like the baboon was instantly turned inside out. There's just nothing in this film I enjoyed. The concept and setup was solid, but the execution was enough to make me lose any appetite for the next several hours, which is not exactly what I look for in movies. 1 out of 5 stars.
I won't be a sarcastic dick about this one.
This movie's not for everyone. Fuck, it wasn't for me.
The first half of his review, I mean, that's a complete to each his own. Like, but I will take contention with there's no story. There is a story. There's a very deep, nuanced story. I think what he means is there's not much of a plot, and we've talked about plot versus story before. The plot is simple, yes, but the story is very complex. I just think his overall gross outness of the movie, he kind of just decided to blank out and not engage with it, which it's fine. You know, people can react to a movie any way they want.
This would be my reaction to this film if I had never met you and you hadn't forced me to appreciate even the base level of horror.
Oh, that's the sweetest thing you've ever said.
I know. I would be Ben L here where I'd say that was fucking disgusting. Why is anybody about this? And now I get why people like this movie. I understand what it's going for. It's just not my cup of tea. I know that it's very good at executing the themes that it's going for and establishing the tone that it wants to go for. And I know that is a desire for this kind of film with certain audiences, but I am not in that audience. So I can appreciate this film for what it does, but I understand why Ben is upset here because this is my immediate gut reaction to this film. It's like, what the fuck are we doing? Good God, why?
And honestly, this is honestly the best case scenario that I hoped for. Because I knew that you weren't gonna traditionally like this movie, because we established before that you can tolerate horror and enjoy horror when it's more overtly silly and over the top.
Yes, that's when I actually like horror. No.
And this is the opposite of that.
This is a very good, serious horror film, which is not my enjoyment, but I can appreciate it for what it accomplishes.
And that's what I was hoping. I was hoping you would see past your visceral reaction and see the merit in it, which you did, so yay! Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. Happy Halloween, everyone. He successfully got me to acknowledge that horror is a meaningful and valuable genre that I just can't fucking stand. Oh,
now I almost feel bad. No, I don't. Maybe a little.
No,
maybe
you
2%. Maybe 2%. Sorry,
feel proud.
not sorry.
Feel proud. This is your month. I'm gonna fucking slather you with over-the-top cheer on Christmas. So, it's coming. The other shoe will drop.
I can handle it. See, I don't dislike Christmas. I love Christmas. I don't dislike Christmas movies. I just don't want them to take over America and the world in September. That's what I don't like.
No, you're just fine with us having Halloween in August.
Yeah, because you need Halloween needs a buffer. Halloween needs a handicap, okay? Because it's squeezed out by Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. That's why you need extra time for Halloween. It's the underdog. So I see no hypocrisy in starting Halloween in August.
It's really not anymore. Halloween is so goddamn mainstream. You Halloween nerds are so... You have such a persecution complex of Christmas is fucking ruining Halloween. Oh, I can't believe we see fucking... Oh, the Christmas decorations are already up in Walmart. Oh, I can't fucking...
Is that not a valid criticism?
But then, it's fucking everywhere. All the spooky shit is online. You see all the decorations up. It doesn't come down until after October 31st. It's up in mid-August, and it's around until the end of October. It's around longer than Christmas stuff.
I guess what I'm really pissed off about is that capitalism doesn't push Halloween as hard as it pushes Christmas.
You're just mad that they overlap. You're just mad that there's a Nightmare Before Christmas situation going on with these holidays, where the two are mixing into each other, and you're like, no, you got your chocolate and my peanut butter. You got my peanut butter and my chocolate.
I mean... I'm not going to deny it. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
You're just mad that the two are so close together that they touch.
I am. I'm very mad about it. But you know what? I own that anger, and I don't. I don't try to obfuscate the truth.
We should do Nightmare Before Christmas for one of our November episodes. That would be fitting.
Yeah, it's a classic.
It is a classic. Erica would like talking about that one too.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, any final thoughts on the fly? This is a short episode, but like, God, it was real.
Oh, very real.
It's a very real episode.
It's a classic. I love it just as much as I did last time I saw it, and it's been a while. So, 2 thumbs up from Tyler here.
It made me sick. There's my review. Take that as you will. If I had to I can't place a number on this because I don't want to give it a numerical value of
rank it like so and so teeth falling out of my head out of.
Yeah, I'll let you do the ranking. Here, get your numbers. Throw some
Am I
numbers
ranking it for you or
rank it however the fuck you want? I don't want to put a fucking number to this because I kind of want the film to deteriorate from my brain after we're done here.
I will rate The Fly 1986 10 pussy fingernails out of
fuck
10 fly vomiting on donuts.
Oh, okay. Wonderful, fantastic. All right, happy Halloween, everyone. This has been Tongue
Happy Halloween, Tongue and Free.
Our wonderful Halloween podcasts, which this should be the last one, probably. I'll put it as the last one, even if we do record another one.
That doesn't mean it's Isaac's last horror movie.
Yeah, we've always got next year, and just more stuff in general. We recorded this shit in September, so I've got a whole another month to endure.
I won't throw too much more at you.
Yeah. Anyway, what you want to take us out? You want to do the outro?
Bzz.
Bzz. That's the outro. You've already forgotten our outro song. Not that it was really established.
No, I just sang it. I just sang it in Fly.
Oh, that's the okay. Happy Halloween. We're done here.